Well, welcome to this episode of Did She Really Say That? I am your host, Chef Katrina, also known as Katrina van Oudheusden, and I'm excited for today's episode because you know what? It's time to challenge the education system. Oh, I said it. Yes, it's outdated. It needs a revamp. And just like Truth Bomb Marketing, we are always challenging the norm through innovation. And that's why we bring women onto our podcast so that you guys and ladies get to hear something different, a challenge, something that says, hey, it's time to rewrite the playbook that we've been gifted, just like we rewrite time management for women with the Creator Planner. It's time to do things differently. So, let me talk to you a little bit about who Kimberly is and why I said yes to having her on our show. So, she is the founder and CEO of Bo Knows. Now, I thought this was a fantastic name for a company. So she's Bo Knows Learning, and it's all based around her dog. Oh, I love this. Okay. She's had more than 30 years of experience in educational training. She's had a dynamic career that's expanded everything in the school system from Head Start programs, teachers, admins, everything. She is a recognized thought leader around this. Her leadership has earned her recognition from the Dr. Hornick's receiving Learning Forward principles as a leader of professional learning scholarships for her exceptional efforts in leadership and coaching. She has also been named one of the top 100 innovative educational leaders by the Global Forum for Education. I'm gonna stop right there because I think that's enough bragging about her. But dang, that is an award, okay? She serves on advisory boards for transformational learning programs at Pace University. She really is out to shift how our children learn. It is such a passion of hers that we're going to talk about it during this entire episode. But the big part I want you guys to take away from this, not only is she an amazing professional, but she's a proud dog owner of Balboa. Right? So Bo knows because Balboa is her dog who she takes a lot of life lessons from. And we'll talk about your fascination with Rocky as a symbol of your resilience and determination as we continue into this journey. So, Kimberly, thank you so much for being a yes and joining us here on today's podcast of Did She Really Say That?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super grateful for the opportunity to chat with you today about, the things that we're passionate about, but most importantly, the things that, did she really say that what that represents that, yeah, we need to make some changes and transform the way we do school. So
Yeah, we do. So you've spent 30 years in public education. So give us a little bit of background around that. You were a superintendent and now you are stepping into this world of bow nose learning. So kind of share a little bit of that journey from going from an employee mindset to now being an owner of a business.
yeah, so it started when I was 8 years old, and my third grade teacher, Mrs. Ligori, had us do an All About Me book, and I wrote on the old school diddle line that I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. So my life's purpose is to serve children. My passion is teaching and learning. I'm blessed and grateful to be anchored in my why. I just love serving children. So I knew that that was my purpose. Started teaching in Paterson, New Jersey. And I had the privilege to serve as teacher, vice principal, principal, director, executive director, assistant superintendent of schools. And after 28 years in public schools, I decided to join Head Start. So I can spend some time in the preschool space and the early learning space and learning really all about that. I feel very strongly about families
Mm.
and supporting families as well as early learning. So I'm grateful to have spent time there. And but I always had this little burning desire, to start something. I always thought that I would focus on consulting or supporting, but as the years went by, I just had this little idea, and so yeah, so started during the pandemic, right? We're all home, and I'm sitting on my couch next to my dog Balboa, who you referenced, Rocky. He's named after my beloved Rocky Balboa. It's my favorite thing on the planet. I love everything it represents. And I was searching for some resources to support my teachers, particularly with social emotional learning, during the pandemic, looking for things because we, went home on Friday and said, see you in 2 weeks, and then ended up being what, over a year. And
Yeah.
so I went full into, virtual mode with my teachers. I was very comfortable on that platform. As a high school principal, I implemented personalized learning and such, but it was my preschool teachers' first experience anything like this. So
Oh,
I was
okay.
looking for different resources, and I love curriculum instruction and assessment, all that good stuff, but I just couldn't find what I was looking for.
Hmm.
So I looked down at Balboa. I said, well, let's create it. And so the idea started there. I named it after Bo. So Bo Knows is after Balboa. That's his little puppy picture as my logo there. And the
Yay.
reason why I did that is because he has just been such a powerful teacher to me. And
Okay.
Balboa represents so many things of that I've seen in my students for over
Mm.
30 years. And look, we love our pets, right? And it's something we connect to in their family and kids connect to. And so, even though there were people who said to me, well, people won't understand what you do, or, I was at the chamber and this gentleman said to me, well, I know you do it's something about a dog. And I just love that, right? I just love oh, what is that about? And quite honestly, the story behind it. But about that idea or journey going from an educator to an entrepreneur, quite honestly, I thought it was going to be quite easy, but it wasn't actually. I kind of struggled with it. I struggled in the identity space, for
Mm.
so long, identified as a public school educator. And I didn't realize that, making a slow and gradual, because it was not certainly overnight, but I had a plan for that. But I didn't anticipate that whole identity thing, right? And so I'm like, well, I don't know anything about business. I run school, but I don't know, And that what I came to learn is that the skill sets that I use as a principal in terms of working with my teams and building a mission and a vision and our core values and bringing those alive and working in our school and communicating with parents and literally selling our programs in schools in the nature of service, right? And then I
Yep.
came to see, you know what? Business isn't like something that's obscure or even I'm going to say a little slimy, right? I didn't identify as like I'm not a salesperson, like I'm not anything like that. I can't do those things. But once I saw that, well, wait a minute, I kind of pivoted, my perspective shifted, and said,
Yep.
well, wait a minute. Being an entrepreneur is no different than being, a CEO of a business. Is really no different than being the CEO of your school. It's just that that service delivery might look a little bit different, right?
Correct.
So that's really the biggest shift, and from going, from my public school career to starting Bono's Learning, a ton of learning involved, but also I think what I would share the most with others is that it isn't as different. Like when we want to make that leap, right? When we have a
Right.
desire and want to, follow our dream and our passion, we have with us already a vast toolbox. And sometimes it may be a little bit reframing, or let me just look at this a little bit differently. But it's not the significant pivot that I thought it was. So for me, it was just a little bit change of perspective, saying, well, now I'm serving this way. And that felt really good in my heart.
Yeah. And I can hear that too. For those of you who are listening, if you listen to Kimberly, I love what she said because so many times, especially as women, we don't think that our skill set is transferable into entrepreneurship, but it really is. It is that leadership that we already have been leading with. It's not different. It just shifts a little bit. And now you thought, I can't be responsible for all these people. Well, you were responsible for a team. You were responsible for an entire education system, all these children that were underneath of you. And yet sometimes we don't look at that as that's an entrepreneurial journey. We look
Mhm.
at that as an employee journey only. Well, I think what's the biggest difference, the shift, is the paycheck. So whether you're getting a paycheck or now you're earning your money and you now have to understand how that money moves, I think that starts to become one of the biggest things that we deal with as women in business, is that we're not getting paid, now we're receiving payment. And I think that's a big shift a lot of us go through. And I see you're shaking your head. So what did you hear in that?
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, I think for me, especially, my model of the world was being, a good employee. That was my
Mm-hmm.
model of the world. That's what I saw with my parents. That's what I saw. You went to work, you served your employer, you served your organization and such, and you follow the rules. That was essentially my model of the world. And I did that well for a very long time. And, when I thought about going out, shall we say, on my own, it was like, well, there's, you're going to be not having that level of certainty, right?
Right.
That you're used to, right?
Right.
But then, so it took a little time to say, okay, but now you're going to create another type of uncertainty, certainty, right? And it's just different. But to be honest with you, the way I made that shift in my mind was I wasn't going to be living within the frames of a fixed income anymore. That I saw that, building out bonus learning, and I saw it as an expansion of opportunity, an expansion of being able to serve. And so therefore, and quite honestly, I wanted the freedom and flexibility. And I
Yeah.
want to be able to create my own rule book now, right? Which is, there really aren't any rules. So I found that these systems just weren't serving me in my capacity to be able to do what I needed to do to facilitate a learning community and lead the
Yeah.
way I want to. And quite honestly, some of the rules didn't make any sense to me. But that's what we do. But that doesn't mean it's just because we've always done it that way. We're well into the 21st, we're in a global knowledge economy. The industrial workplace has long been gone, but many of our systems are still reflective of that.
Yeah.
And with my personal philosophy of leading with empathy and grace, that's worked for me in a school system, in whatever system I've been in. But I learned that that isn't always valued. And I believe in putting people first. I believe in investing in professional capital. I think investing in our staff and our teams is the biggest investment we can make in increasing whatever the outcome is. So I also found that that model of the world for me has changed, and I didn't feel that I longer fit into that mold of, shall we say, the good soldier. And I certainly didn't want to compromise my joy or my
Yep.
well-being and what I do because of that. I didn't want to ever feel, quite honestly, stuck in that certainty of a system. So that's why I did plan it this way, but I haven't felt so enthusiastic, empowered, but I quite honestly didn't feel that way at first. It was a little bit of a journey for me to see things differently, gain a different perspective, and quite honestly, make the biggest investment I've ever made in my life, and that's in me. So that's why I decided to do this. And I just say, you know what, Kim, you are going to make the biggest investment of your life in yourself.
Mm. And I think that's one of the things that we don't look at as women is we don't look at our investment. We're so vested in everyone else around us, invested in our families, invested in our children. For you, it sounded like you were invested in all these children, all these schoolworks, and sometimes taking back our power or owning that is that investment in ourselves. So one of the things here, on this episode, it's a bold statement to say, did she really say that? So was there anything so far, because I have a feeling you're going to continue to bust through this, where you've said something to another entrepreneur or maybe another educator, and they had you look and go, holy crap, did she really just say that to me?
Yeah, there's been a few times, and I
Oh,
would have to
shocking.
say, I'd have to say a couple that really stand out for me were with my teachers and decisions I
Mm,
made for our school.
okay.
And it may sound kind of small, not that big, but I can tell you in the space of teaching, it's a big deal. So I was noticing that our children, our high schoolers, really weren't gaining a lot of the concepts we were really teaching to the test, right? Which
Yep.
we still do.
We still do.
Unfortunately, we're still doing that. There's unfortunately still stakes in test scores that don't have any impact on how somebody will perform later on. They just don't. But that's probably a whole nother podcast, right? But in any event, I said, what we're going to do is we're going to start teaching children the content and not just practice these words. So I took all the books out of the classroom, and they're like,
Wow.
did she really say that? I asked my head custodian, I said, please go in. And they had like these phone books that like these test prep. I said, get them out of the classrooms. And the teacher was like, it was like I pulled an oxygen mask from their mouths.
Wow.
I said, we're going to take the test pet books out, done and gone. And we're going to teach the children the math. We're going to teach them the literature. Because if they can do it well here, they're going to transfer that knowledge. If we
Yeah,
don't, we're not learning anything, and they're not going to be able to transfer into any situation they encounter. So that was a big one
agreed.
that really sucks out, because that was
Woo.
a big deal for the teachers to remove those things out the classroom and have them be accountable and responsible for the
For their
curriculum content.
education.
Yeah.
You're putting
So that
it
was,
back on education again. It's like educate, be the teacher of these kids, facilitate this knowledge, not just lead from a test perspective guidebook,
yeah.
which is
And the second
terrible.
one in the same context in my high school in Newark, New Jersey was, there was a lot of rules for compliance and control.
Mm.
And in turn, the kids and a lot of the children in my particular situation would find out how to buck the system, right? They would
Yeah.
find ways. I mean, even
Yeah.
like that old school cutting holes in books and sticking stuff in there, it happened. When I got to the school, they wore uniforms, which is fine. They weren't allowed to have cell phones. They were taken away. And this was like over 10 years ago. We didn't have those grown and sexy pouches or assistant. It was just,
Yep.
I didn't have the staff. I didn't have an infrastructure. It was a nightmare.
Mm.
Um, I also believe very strongly in empowering children and giving them the opportunities how to, right, manage themselves, manage their time, manage their resource, because where are they going to learn that otherwise? The children are going
Oh,
to adulthood.
okay. Kimberly, they literally now have in college like like basic 101 for like how to study. Like they have
Yeah.
these remedial classes that they're almost now requiring our students to go through that they're not getting in elementary or high
Mhm.
school. So I definitely hear that. And that's the annoying part. I think that's the frustration part, I think, over here. And I'm not even a parent, but just working with these kids, seeing them in the workforce, and hearing these kids talk about it.
Mhm.
And they're going into college and they're like, yeah, I'm taking this remedial basics course on like how to study and how to think. And it's like, why wasn't this taught to me in high school? Like they're even asking this question.
Right.
So I can see where it's, a frustration, but there's also this sense, and I just want to recognize our time here because I really want to fill this in. But you believe in a social emotional learning
Mm.
process. So can you just kind of like, I don't want to shorten this, but I really want you to kind of, how is this an essential? Like, it's not just something, emotional learning isn't something that's just nice to have. It really is a requirement of being a good human being. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah. So something you said that's really, really important is the requirement of being a good human being. So the
Mm,
first thing I want to say, that social emotional learning journey starts when we're born and ends when we die. It is a lifelong journey. It is not a one and done. So it is literally a lifelong process. As human beings, which we're human beings, right? Not human doers. As human beings, we're comprised of four systems: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. So we are a four system human being.
that is
Mental.
totally outside of the box thinking for who I know as teachers. So thank you for being that in the world.
Well, it's true, because that's what we are. Human and children, they don't just start that when they turn what, in middle or high school or adult. It doesn't work that way. So we are born into this physical world with four
Mm,
systems that at the same time, one isn't more than the other. So mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Our physical is our physical bodies, of course, right? Our spiritual has nothing to do with religion or beliefs like that, but in terms of a spiritual, in terms of who am I? What do I believe in? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Those bigger, broader questions. So that's the way I'm defining it in terms of, for this purpose. It's not a religious thing, anything like that. Our mental is our mind, is our thoughts, right? We have a
mm,
gazillion thoughts going through our heads all day, every day. Everyone does. Okay.
yes.
And we do have the capacity, right, to choose what those thoughts are, because those thoughts become things and drive our belief systems, our values, and our actions. So our
Agreed.
self-talk and what we're saying in our mind is really super important. Emotional are our emotions, right? So I appreciate the term mental health and at the comprise, but what the way I approach this work is those four systems simultaneously: our mind, our spiritual, our physical, and our emotional sense of self.
It's
And
the whole
as
thing.
it's the whole thing, right? So I really take a holistic approach. So I'll be the first one to say SEL isn't something we do. And although I appreciate anyone, particularly leading organizations, well, they'll say, bravo, a teacher found how to integrate or did 20 minutes of stuff. That's great. Not enough. Not the deal, right? Social
Right.
emotional learning isn't something we do. It's who we are in terms of our holistic growth and development as human beings. And so the approach I take, I'll start with my school improvement efforts because my experiences, most of my experience in schools where I've ended up either as a teacher or as a principal are turnaround situations.
Yeah.
And I took a dual prong approach. This is what I did with my work on RTI, or response to intervention, or multi-tier system of support, wherever you are. It's synonymous. It really is. The whole idea is that we were building out strong academic programs, strong
Mm,
generally, where all children have, the equitable access to be successful, as well as building out their social emotional piece. It's not a one or. And so the approach I take is how to integrate, right, the concepts of self-awareness. Who am I? How do I show up in the world? What are my strengths?
mm,
What are my areas of growth? How do I learn? How do
mm.
I absorb material? Because very often as teachers, we teach the way we learn, and very
Yep.
often we teach to the middle. Kids above are screwed, and they're not getting that advance. So kids who are done or meeting the stand or exceeding the standards, and kids below are screwed. They're in classes, whether they have an IEP not, that are lower and slower. They don't need lower and slower. They just need a different approach.
Approach. Yep.
So understanding how to do that in a classroom with multiple personalities, multiple learning styles, you can do that, developing a toolbox with that.
I
Um,
agree. There was
yeah.
actually an opportunity that I had because I did a an adjunct for culinary, and I had one of my students I recognized. He needed to verbally speak his
Mhm.
test.
Yeah.
Like, I just recognized him trying to be quiet and do this, like, he was struggling with it. I put him in the back of the room and I said, "Hey, just sit here and just read it out loud to yourself because I think you're an auditory learner.
Mhm.
And so for you to get this, you're going to need to read it to yourself. So not to
Mhm.
distract the room, sit back here, go through it, and then because he needs to process differently."
Mhm.
And I recognize that. And I think there's so many times we're getting to classrooms and situations where we're not recognizing that there's an auditory learner, there's a tactile learner, there's different approaches. And when you only teach down the middle, you're right, we do lose top and bottom
Mhm.
because we're actually not teaching to the person. And my business partner Heidi homeschooled her three children, and she talks about how different each one of her schooling experiences with her kids and how
Mhm.
they learned, and it was all vastly different. So it's definitely an interesting, when you're talking about, it is a social emotional learning. It is definitely a time for us to get back to teaching a person and not a
Mhm.
book, because I feel like that's really what we come down to in the school systems is we're teaching a book, and we think the kids in front of us are a book, and we're like, this isn't working anymore. It's like this philosophy doesn't. So your
Yeah.
mission is to really empower, inspire, and transform. If you could leave our listeners with one powerful message about helping children and leaders thrive, what would it be?
One is, I would say, truly invest in your own self-care and personal growth and development. Um, really, really invest in your own self-care. Think about what you need, right, to tackle or take on situations that are
Mm,
challenging so that you can stay regulated, right? So learn what activates you, learn what triggers you. And we living life, we all experience hard things. I don't know anyone who goes through the human experience that doesn't experience some form of trauma along the way. Little t, big T, and these kind of experience are challenging, whether it be grief, whatever it is. I would encourage everyone in terms of that self-care and healing to invest in that, whatever works for you, whether it's some personal things like journaling or reading or podcasts or books. It could be therapy, just having someone to talk to, even learning some strategies like reframing. just being aware of our self-talk and what we're telling ourselves, right? I would say that's definitely number one of the two, right? The second thing is just continue to grow. Continue to invest in yourself as a learner. Personal growth is so very important. If that means learning a new skill, if that means finding a hobby, if it means taking your professional practice in a different direction, it may mean, like for a chef, hey, let me try this other type of dip, right? I always kind of stick with this genre, but let me try something new. It could be as simple as that, or as complex as, hey, you know what? I want to learn a new language.
Yes.
But investing in our self-care and really spend time in that space of self-awareness. Who am I? How do I show up? What do I need? So I can help myself regulate, which are those executive functioning skills. So I can have positive relationships. I can have those positive, even hard conversations. That starts with developing our sense of self. So I would say self-care and just continue to grow and learn. Can be something big, something small, take our practice, but just those two things as a parent, as a leader, will help us in turn lead with grace and empathy, show our children, our staff that compassion, and lead to our step where someone asks us, did she really say that? Because that comes from ourselves as, in terms of self-care and learning and growing.
Yeah, and I love this because I really do, even for myself, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly evolving. I think that's the process of being a human being. And I know that as we wrap this up, you have a free gift to share with all of our listeners. So talk to me about the 5 clues that you're going to be sharing with our audience.
Yeah, sure. So I put together a guide for parents, caregivers, teachers. It's called Five Clues to Your Child's Learning Style. It's totally free, nothing attached to it. You can get it from a simple QR code. And it's just a little guide that provides some clues about how your child responds to stress, communication, those little things. So I welcome anyone, take the QR code. Like I said, totally free, not attached to anything. And I'm hoping that you'll find it helpful when working and learning with others, whether it be children or even adults, because, little people turn into grown people, right? And we take those qualities and traits and characteristics with us.
Yeah, I always say that as kids, the learning style that we learn as children, we take into adulthood. Like we don't relearn how we learn. It's something we've always developed. And so even as we're getting older and as we take on new things, we're learning the same way. So I definitely find myself tactile. I find myself in that space. So definitely grab this in the show notes, all of this, how to contact Kimberly, how to get those 5 clues to understanding yourself, how you learn, are all going to be available to you because honestly, and did she really say that? Kimberly has rocked the world of education. And you've heard her say that it's not just about teaching from a book, it's about teaching from life perspective. And when we get back to teaching human beings and everything that they are and who they are in the world, we start to evolve. And so I really just want to acknowledge you, Kimberly, for the bold stance with Bo Knows and taking on this learning style and this education and really saying it's time to redefine what education looks like, not just for ourselves, but for our children and our future generations. So thank you. Any last words to share with our audience before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for taking a moment of your time. It's a gift of your time. You have, a very busy day. You have a lot of choices, and I'm super, super grateful for the gift of your time and checking us out today. And just remember to invest in yourself. You are your most valuable commodity.
Great.
I can't stress that enough, but just please take care of yourselves and continue to learn and grow. And I'm super grateful for the gift of your time and the opportunity to chat with you today.
Awesome. So, Bo knows learning. If you're a parent, if you're wanting to learn, if you're an educator, take the time to dive into this and really learn from Kimberly what it is to take a look at education through a different lens. I think it's time. I think it's well beyond time. And she's leading the forefront in an education process that needs to get evolved. So, thank you again, Kimberly, for being on with us. And with that, we'll see you all, our listeners, on our next episode.
Thank you again.